This is First Coast Math Clinic with lesson number 1, coordinate plane, from Unit 7, graphing. So our goal is to graph and identify ordered pairs on the coordinate plane. And before we get into graphing and identifying ordered pairs on the coordinate plane, let's talk about the coordinate plane itself and draw out our coordinate plane. So to draw our coordinate plane, we're going to start by drawing our horizontal x-axis. So our horizontal line, our horizontal axis is our x-axis. So again, we're going to denote that with an x. And that's basically just going to be a basic number line, right? So we've got 0 in the middle. We've got our positive values to the right, negative values to the left. All right, so that's our x-axis. And to create our coordinate plane, our two-dimensional coordinate plane, we're going to intersect this with a vertical axis. This is our y-axis. So again, denoted by a y. Our positive values are above the x-axis. Our negative values are below the x-axis. Now we've got specific locations, specific coordinates, or ordered pairs on our graph that we can identify, specific points on our graph that we can identify by picking x values and y values on our coordinate plane. And we call those points ordered pairs, right? And our ordered pairs are basically just x and y combinations that we write in parentheses. So to identify our location on the coordinate plane, we're going to use our ordered pair, and our ordered pair is just a combination of x and y coordinates. And before we get into finding some ordered pairs, we notice that when we draw in our x and y axis, our coordinate plane is broken up into basically four different sections, four different quadrants, we call them. So quadrant 1 is top right, and then we move counterclockwise to quadrant 2, and then quadrant 3, and then quadrant 4. So for right now, we're just going to name these quadrants: quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some specific properties of these quadrants once we identify some points in each of the quadrants. Okay, so again, quadrant 1 is like all the points in this area right here in this quadrant. Quadrant 2 is top left. Quadrant 3 is bottom left. And quadrant 4 is bottom right. Okay? And we'll talk more about the specific properties of each of those quadrants in a second, but for right now, I just want you to understand, to know that we've got four quadrants: quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, and let's get into identifying some specific ordered pairs. Okay? So we've got points on our coordinate plane. So points A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. And we can identify the location of each of these points by identifying the x value and the y value at each point. So let's start with A. So A is right here. And let's figure out, starting at 0, 0. So our point right here, this is our origin. So where the x and the y-axis cross, that's our origin. How do we get from that origin to point A, right? How far over do we have to go? How far up do we have to go? So on our x-axis, I have to go over 1, right? So I'm at coordinate 1 on our x-axis. So my x value is going to be 1. All right, now how far up do I have to go? Well, I've got to go up 1. So my y value is going to be 1 also. So my coordinate for A is going to be at point 1, 1. So that's the ordered pair, the location for point A. Now what about B? B, you may realize, well, B is right at the origin. It's at the intersection of the x and y axis. So B, whenever we have a point that's right here at the origin where the x and y axis intersect, that point is going to be 0, 0. All right, what about point C? So again, starting at our origin, we're moving to the right. How far to the right do we have to go? We're going to go all the way over to 5. Okay, so our x value is 5. How far up do we have to go? We've got to go up to 4, right? So we're at 4 on the y-axis. So C is 4, or x is 4, excuse me. Because again, our first coordinate is our x value, second coordinate is our y value. So our ordered pair for C, our location for C, is 5, 4. What about for D? Let's do D in green. So I'm going to go over. So I'm going to still go over 5 units, right? So my x coordinate is 5. So I'm moving over until my x value is lined up with D. Now I've got to go down. Well, how far down do I have to go? Going down right to right about here. And where is that? That is -2. So my y value is -2. So D is 5, -2. Let's do E. So E is right here. Now I'm moving to the left. So moving back, I have to go to -2. So x is going to be -2. And I've got to go down. So how far down do I have to go? I have to go down to -4. So -2, -4 to get to E. Then let's get the coordinate for F. So F is right here. So again, starting at our origin, I'm going to go down -6. I don't have to go to the left or the right at all. My x value is 0 starting. I don't have to go to left or right at all, so x is going to be 0. I'm going down 6, so my y value is -6. So my coordinate for F, let me clean this up a little bit, is going to be 0, -6. So F is 0, -6, because again, its x value is 0 because we didn't move at all to the left or the right. We moved 0 units to the left, 0 units to the right, but we moved 6 units down. All right, what about G? So let's compare the difference between F and G. Now I've got to move 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the left. So G, my x value is -4 because I'm moving 4 units to the left. But I don't have to move up or down at all. So my y value is going to be 0. So my coordinate for G is going to be -4, 0. Because again, my height here, my y value, is still at the origin, the y value of the origin, which is 0. Let's do H. So H, I'm moving to the left 1, 2, 3, so I'm at -3. Now I'm going up 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm at 3, so my y value is 3. So H is going to be -3, 3. And I for the last one. Well, let's look at I, right? We notice that, let me clean this up a little bit, so it's a little easier to see. So I is right here, right? It's right on the y-axis. We notice that if we start at the origin and we want to get to I, what direction do we have to move? We don't have to move left or right at all. We have to move up, right? So if we don't have to move left or right at all, that x value doesn't need to change. So x is going to stay 0, but y is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So y is going to be 5. So my I value is 0, 5. Okay. And we'll talk about, this side's getting a little messy, so on the next couple slides we'll talk about the relationship between the values in the quadrants, the points in the quadrants, and the signs themselves. I want to do a little bit more practice of plotting points and identifying points with you guys before we do that. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, let's do some more practice identifying some coordinates on the coordinate plane. So again, we know this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So let's see if we can draw some conclusions about maybe the signs of some of the values based on the quadrant. And we've got kind of the grid drawn out here, so maybe make it a little bit easier to identify our points, right? This is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. So let's identify point A. So let's actually start with, let's maybe break this up by quadrants, okay? So let's do quadrant 1. So quadrant 1, we've got points C and D, okay? So C, if we're going to go find point C, start at 0, right? We're going to go over 1, 2, so x is 2, and then we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, so y is 4. Remember, our ordered pair is x value first and then y value. So C is going to be 2, 4. D, we're going over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So x is 6. We're going up 1, 2, 3. So 6, 3. Okay, so our quadrant 1 points are 2, 4 and 6, 3. Let's compare that to quadrant 2. So in quadrant 2, we've got point A and point E. I'm not including the points that are on the axis themselves, just in the quadrants. So point E, let's do E first. We're going to the left, so negative, right? These are our negative, this is our negative direction, this is our positive direction. This is positive, this is negative. So since I'm going to the left, I'm going negative, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So x is negative 3. Now my y's, I'm going up 1, up 2, so positive 2. So negative 3, 2. A, going to the left, so going in a negative direction, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. So we're at negative 6 right here. And then we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're at negative 6, 7. And let's just compare the signs that we have, right? So in quadrant 1, we notice we've got a positive and a positive, a positive and a positive. In quadrant 2, we've got a negative and a positive, negative and a positive. So that's going to be the rule of our signs. In quadrant 1, the signs of our x and y values are going to be positive, positive. In quadrant 2, our signs are going to be negative, and positive. Okay, so quadrant 1, all of our ordered pairs are going to be positive and positive. In quadrant 2, our signs are going to be negative and positive. Let's look at quadrant 3. So quadrant 3, we've got points F and I. So F, we're again moving to the left, so negative direction, so negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so negative 5, and we're moving down 1, negative 1, right? So we're moving to the left because this is a negative direction, and then down, which is a negative direction, negative 1. I, moving to the left, 1, 2, 3, so negative 3. And then down, again, another negative direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 6. And then quadrant 4. So quadrant 4, we just have point J. So point J, we're moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the right, and right's going to be a positive direction. But we're moving down, which is negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so negative 5. So let's look at the signs that we have here, right? So in quadrant 3, we've got a negative and a negative, negative and negative. So quadrant 3, our signs are going to be negative, negative. So all the coordinates in quadrant 3 are going to be negative, negative. All the coordinates in quadrant 4, right, we've got positive, negative, are going to be positive, negative in quadrant 4. So this is positive, negative. All right, so we did the coordinates inside the on the grid itself. I want to do the points that are actually on the axes. So let's do that as well. All right, so we talked about the points inside the quadrants. We figured out quadrant 1 is positive, positive. Quadrant 2, negative, positive. Quadrant 3 is negative, negative. Quadrant 4 is positive, negative. Let's look at the points on the axes themselves, starting with our x-axis, right? So we know our x-axis is right here. It's this axis. So the point that we have on our x-axis is point H. Well, what's the coordinate for that point? Right, we know that here on the origin, that point in red is 0, 0. So how do we get from here to point H? Well, I don't have to move up or down at all. I just have to move to the right 1. So I have to move a positive direction on my x-axis 1. Right, so here, that x coordinate is 1. And the y value is 0. So my H coordinate is 1, 0. All right, what about on the y-axis? So on our y-axis, we know our y-axis is this, our vertical axis here, okay? Let's clean this up a little bit. So let's start, we've got points B and G. So point B, again, if we start at our origin, we don't have to move to the left or right at all, right? So here, x is negative 1 right here, x is positive 1 right here. We've got to move up, so x is going to stay 0, but we're moving up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So y is 6 at that B coordinate. And what about G? So again, we don't have to move to the left or right at all. So x is going to stay 0, but we're moving down, so we're moving in a negative direction into the negatives. -1, -2. So our y value for g is going to be -2. So keeping in mind that our ordered pair is xy, let's see, is there anything you notice? For our y-axis, we notice that the x value and x value here is 0. So if a point is on the x-axis, or excuse me, a point is on the y-axis, the x-coordinate is going to be 0. If a point is on the y-axis, well, what do we notice here? Here, that y value is going to be 0. So that y-coordinate, actually, let's say y value instead of coordinate. That'll be a little bit more accurate. We'll say the y, or excuse me, x value of ordered pair. That'll be a little more accurate. And then on our x-axis, right here, the y value of ordered pair is 0, and the x value of the ordered pair is 0. Okay, so let's do one more example with this, right? So let's say I put point K right here on our x-axis. So if K is on our x-axis, we automatically know, well, the y value of the ordered pair has to be 0. So we just have to figure out, well, what is that x value going to be? So let's kind of count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're counting to the left. That's negative, right? So it should be -7. All right, last thing I want to do is graph some points. So we've got points A through G. Let's start with A, -3, 4, and just a reminder of our coordinates, or quadrants, right? Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, 3, and 4, and we know quadrant 1 is positive, positive. Quadrant 2 is negative, positive. Quadrant 3 is negative, negative. Quadrant 4 is positive, negative. So we've got a negative, positive, so this has to be in quadrant 2. Okay, so -3, +4. We're going to go over to the left. 1, 2, 3, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4. So point A should be right here. B is 2, -5, so a positive, negative, so that should be in quadrant 4. So I'm going to go to the right 2, 1, 2, and then down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So point B is going to be right here. Now point C, my x value is 0. If my x value is 0, right, we're going to be on the y-axis. So I'm not moving to the left or right at all. Since x is 0, I'm going to move, my y value is -3. I'm going to move down 3, 1, 2, 3, because again, that move in the negative direction. So C is going to be right here. That's our positive direction, positive direction. D is 1, 6, positive, positive, so that's going to be in quadrant 1. So I'll move, our ordered pair is XY, so I'm going to move 1 to the right on our x-axis, then up 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So point D is right here, because again, remember that first coordinate, that 1 is my x value, 6 is my y value, so I'm going to move 1 on the x-axis. Let me just label this in case you guys forgot, so that x value is horizontal, y value is vertical. So I'm moving 1 on the x-axis, and then 6 on the y-axis. E, -4, -4, so negative, negative. That's quadrant 3, so I'm going to go 4, -4 to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're at -4, and then I'm going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's coordinate E. F is 3, 2, so that's positive, positive. So we're going to be in quadrant 1. So I'm going to go on the x-axis over 3, 1, 2, 3, and then up 2, 1, 2. So F is going to be right here. And then G is -5, 0. So here, y equals 0. So this is going to be on the x-axis. So since y is equal to 0, we're not going to move up or down at all. X is equal to -5, so I'm going to go -5 units, or 5 units to the left into the negative direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's my coordinate for G. Okay. All right, so this wound up being a little bit longer than I thought it would be, or intended it to be, but I wanted to give you guys a good amount of examples in terms of graphing or identifying the parts of the coordinate plane, working with the different quadrants, identifying the properties of the quadrants, identifying points, and then graphing points on the coordinate plane. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. First Coast Math Clinic.